Welcome back to another episode of Can of Worms. Tonight we'll be tackling Final Fantasy XIV and the Endwalker expansion that was announced about, what, a week or two ago?
I just saw the story this morning, but it's probably been, a week or so.
Yeah, it's been about a week since it's been announced, so we'll have the trailer playing for you all in the background. But I mean, there's a lot to unpack here tonight, not just with the new expansion, but the previous expansions that have already released and where the story's headed. And just some confusion, I think, in the player base in general and for new players. You hear Endwalker and the end of the story. I think a lot of people are kind of confused what that means for this game.
Yeah, we shared a story this morning because one of the game directors, and I think it might have been like the music director or something like that, was talking about Endwalker, and they kind of phrased it in a way to make it sound like it was the true ending of the game. So that's probably something you guys can clear up like right away, because I have no idea, and I kind of want to.
There's just so much that, I mean, it's obviously going to be kind of confusing, especially if you don't know the story 100% up to this point. Watching the trailers and stuff like that, you just have so much going on, so much flashing lights and crazy stuff happening that you're like, okay, what is this? Who is that? Blah, blah, blah.
Characters that like I'm recognizing a couple of them, but I don't know if this is the girl or the guy that I'm looking at for one. But
right. So this part of the trailer here is actually introducing something very big to the game, and it is the Sage. This is going to be the new class.
Fucking hype for this.
I'm saying. So it's going to be a shield healer class. A barrier healer is what they're referring to it as. They're actually going to revamp a couple things, including, and this is kind of a surprise to a lot of people, is making the Astrologian a pure healer and making it more like the white mage than I'm saying, dude. So as all my classes are maxed out at the moment, and I can tell you I had so much fun playing the Astro. It's just the power of the white mage was just so much healier. Seeing this revamp is going to be pretty cool. Yeah.
So was it kind of like the typical MMO setup where the white mage can basically handle the massive burst like after the fact, or
this is a concept that a lot of people didn't get about the healer classes, is they were all aligned to a time thing. So where you had the scholar was kind of like the most in the moment healer, white mages were more reactive, like, okay, everybody's dying, let's heal them up, and that's what they were good at. Astrologians, to fit their whole concept of future telling and cards and stuff like that, they were a barrier healer for a long time, where it was like, okay, we're going to give them a regen or a barrier to prevent the damage from happening,
like spike damage.
So you had like past, present, and future with the healers, and that's why a lot of people didn't like the Astrologian. It's because they were expecting the reactivity of a white mage when it came to that. And that is not how you can play that class, or at least it wasn't how you could play that class when it first came out, especially.
I also think it played into a very interesting issue that they had, which was that most classes had 4 jobs attached to them, right? Like most classes had like, 2 to 4 jobs attached to them. Healers only had 3, so they made Astrologian like basically a middleman, where you had 2 sexes, what they're called sex, and you had diurnal and nocturnal. One was for barrier healing and one was for regenerative healing, like Chris said. The problem was both sex just did not work very optimally in their situation. There wasn't a reason why you would take Astrologian over a scholar, and there definitely wasn't a reason why you take an Astrologian over a white mage. Their buffs weren't strong enough in the beginning.
Nope.
They were too random, and then once they got reworked, okay, you take a lot of the randomness out of the buffs, but it's still not enough,
right?
To completely drop one of those rolls. Exactly.
It was a nightmare if you got into a random trial and had 2 Astros. You first and foremost, you had both of them wanting to play the same sect, and you were like, okay, one of you needs to be shield, one needs to be regen, and
because regen felt so much better. And this is my main class. I switched over from Dragoon to this class and played it through a lot of these expansions, and it just. The barriers weren't strong enough. The regen was great. I like the regenerative sect. It felt pretty good. It just didn't put up good numbers.
Okay.
And that was a big problem. I think a common misconception with the Endwalker expansion is that Yoshi P and crew came out and said, this is the end of the story. But when watching that letter from the producer, or that's not what they meant. And they went on to further explain this is the end of the current story, and a different story is going to reboot in the same game, or not reboot. It's going to boot up in the same game.
Yeah, this is a story arc ending.
It's not
exactly
sort of like when they actually started A Realm Reborn, how they ended the original 10 arc. It's not like that, is it? Like that kind of scale?
Well, it is kind of like that kind of scale. Just remember, Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn was ending a shit game, and just completely reworking it. This is putting the cherry on top of a story and then going into a different story. Think like Dragon Ball Z sagas. This is the end of this saga, and we're starting up a new saga. That's exactly what's happening here.
I think an easier thing to compare it to would be what World of Warcraft recently went through, where, I mean, it wasn't over as long a scale as Final Fantasy did, but Warlords of Draenor and Legion were, and Battle for Azeroth were basically all within one storyline.
They were a trilogy.
And not that the current expansion isn't part of that same storyline, but it's continuing that storyline. Like now we're in the Void storyline where we're, hunting down Sylvanas and all that stuff.
Okay. So before
it was like bringing back the Legion, and oh no, some other dank shit's happening because of it.
Right. And what you were saying, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that makes a lot of sense. That it's basically the end of a piece of a larger timeline,
end of an era.
But the storyline that they're ending right now, is this the storyline that we started with when they came out with A Realm Reborn?
Yes. And the reason for that, so this is Zodiark and Hydaelyn, and there's like the Ascians, and we can clear that up another time. I can get more in depth with that, of course, but
clear up your Ascian.
Clear up my Ascian. We'll wipe that up later. Yeah.
The new man.
So it's a lot of kind of Star Wars-esque light side, dark side stuff happening that they're finally going to be putting a wrap up to. Shadowbringers really put a twist on it in the sense that light and dark kind of swapped for a second. You have to have that balance, and it did a really good. I mean, in my opinion, out of all the MMOs I've played and expansions I've played, Shadowbringers has hands down the best expansion I've ever played.
It was really highly rated. Like
it was. It is. I honestly, I'll be honest, I didn't think there was going to be an expansion in this game that beat the Heaven's Word expansion.
Right.
And this blew my expectations away, story wise and just gameplay wise, just the fights and encounters. Like,
dude, the visuals alone gave me chills. The storyline was amazing. Like, I know I'm going a little overboard with
no, not at all.
Amazing.
Dude, the main zone that you're in Shadowbringers, with all of like the cherry blossom trees and stuff like that, is so pretty.
Beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
Fucking pretty.
Only pre-order in this one. I mean, I know life. It's just gonna happen.
I might. I don't know.
Great trailer. Excited to see how this story ends. I'm gonna have to play this expansion. It'll probably get the same kind of life cycle that it gets for me, which is blaze through the story, enjoy the story, blaze through the first few primals and the first few like hard dungeons that they have, and then blaze through the first couple of difficulties of the first raid that pops out. And then by that point in time, I hope I'm not Final Fantasy'd out, and I want to see where the story goes. And then it becomes just this casual weekly, hop on, do my weekly grinds, and progress in the raid. Hopefully I get to play it with people I enjoy. So.
Yeah, but you might end up having to play with us.
That would suck.
Yeah,